Hello and welcome to another podcast revisiting one of the tongue twisters from season 1 of English Sound Building. If you haven't listened to season 1 yet, I do recommend that you start there before listening to this short podcast, because we look at each of the sounds in much more detail in those longer episodes. As usual, you'll find a video bonus as well as the very short script for today's podcast over on my Patreon page. Everything's free there. Just scroll down on the main page. But if you want to support me, please do. Thanks so much to those of you who already are. Head to www.patreon.com/EnglishBrickByBrick. So this week, we're looking at a pretty short tongue twister, one I first introduced on the video bonus after the episode, and it is skirts and shirts. Now, we can extend this one to make it a bit longer by repeating skirts and shirts, skirts and shirts, skirts and shirts. Or if you want to make it even trickier, by switching every time you repeat. So we get skirts and shirts, shirts and skirts, skirts and shirts. So it obviously focuses on that sound, but also includes, from the sounds we've looked at, s and potentially s and t in a th cluster. The reason I say potentially is that this tongue twister is also a great example of the fact that that letter T might not be clearly pronounced as a t sound. At speed, I'm much more likely to say skirts and shirts, replacing the t with a stop in my throat instead. So you don't hear nothing. I don't just eliminate that letter T entirely and read skers and shurs. That results in a z sound on the final letter S because I don't turn my voice off. But you don't hear the t either. Instead, I stop my voice and then read the s as a voiceless sound. So rather than skers, it's skirts. You can see how I stop my voice there in my throat after the sound. There's no better option here between skirts and skirts or shirts and shirts. Have a play and see which option you prefer. And if you find it almost impossible to tell the difference between them, don't worry about that for now, but do try to pay attention to what your mouth is doing whilst you read them or whilst you repeat them. The other thing I wanted to say about this tongue twister is just to think about that sound again. And as I said in the episode, the most frequent thing that I'll see my learners doing is making that sound too high up in their mouth and resulting in something more like an sound. So do make sure your tongue is nice and low, particularly at the back of your mouth, and that your mouth is really relaxed to pronounce that rather than We're going to start though with a really slow read through, and you'll notice in the slow read through that I do pronounce the ts and s in the ts cluster quite clearly. It feels really unnatural to me to replace that with a stop when I'm reading it more slowly. That's something which happens when I read it at speed. Listen and repeat. Skirts and shirts. You will notice though that that and gets reduced to its weak form, even when I read it really slowly. Let's try again. Skirts and shirts. Well done. Now we're going to read it at normal speed and just notice what happens to those t sounds and those ts clusters when you read at normal speed. Shirts and skirts. I've just realised I read it the wrong way round. Let's try it the other way round. Skirts and shirts. And let's try again. Skirts and shirts. And then to finish, we're just going to practice reading it in a variety of different ways, in a variety of different tones. So first, we'll whisper it. Skirts and shirts. Now we'll say it with surprise. Skirts and shirts. Now we'll say it happily. Skirts and shirts. Now angrily. Skirts and shirts. And how else could you say it? Have a think, pause the podcast, and go for it. Brilliant. So to finish, we'll come back to the tongue twister, the full tongue twister as it was, and hopefully it will be a bit easier for you now you've warmed your mouth up. Skirts and shirts. And then we'll push ourselves a little bit by repeating it 3 times, just as is. Skirts and shirts, skirts and shirts, skirts and shirts. And then finally, let's try mixing it up. So we go skirts and shirts, shirts and skirts, skirts and shirts. And then if you really want to push it, read that mixed up version 3 times. So you get 9 skirts and shirts or shirts and skirts in total. Skirts and shirts, shirts and skirts, skirts and shirts. Skirts and shirts, shirts and skirts, skirts and shirts. Skirts and shirts, shirts and skirts, skirts and shirts. And it's one which I think starts to sound just really weird in my ears when I've read it so many times. It's a bit like when you say your own name over and over again and you can't quite believe it belongs to you. Well done. I hope that practice was fun and helpful for you to revisit those sounds. Of course, we'll have another one next week. There'll also be video bonus this week and same content as usual coming on my Instagram. If you do use social media, make sure you come and follow me over there. It's at English Brick by Brick. Enjoy sound building. Have a great week, and I'll see you again soon.